Hello and welcome back to another JPizza tutorial. Today we're going to be working on this beautiful chat app. So look at this. We have the server over here and we have two clients open here. So we can say, hello there. You can see a message from Joe over here. Hello there. Let's send one from Bob. Hello Joe. We have one from Bob. And over on the server we have all these things, all these messages, and it's working fine. So let's actually work on the code for this. Now you got a little sneak peek, but I'm going to delete it all. And you may be wondering, hey, this isn't mozzarella. And you would be right. Mozzarella is now deprecated as there is now Visual Studio Code support for JPizza. So there's no more use for mozzarella. You can get this plugin by just searching JPizza in the extensions, and you have JPizza language support. You just click install right there, and voila. Then you have all this cool stuff like that. It's really nice looking. So let's get right into this. And I'm going to start off with the client. And the reason we're going to start with the client is because it's just easier in this scenario and it can help us understand what the server's doing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import socks since we're working with a sort of web interprocess communication app. We're going to be using sockets, and the default socket library is not very great. So the first function we're going to create is just going to be a helper function. It's going to asynchronously get input in the background so we can run all our other tasks and get input at the same time without having to wait for the user to finish it. So let's create our function, get input. What this is just going to do is, you see, async, very important, where it's just going to be a while true loop. And then we're going to do input, and then it's just an empty field. Now, the reason we're not doing anything like var input at the beginning is because this is going to be setting the input variable in a larger scope that it's going to be called in. So it's already going to be defined. Now, I'm going to create a little comment here, which is going to show, it's going to demonstrate what our message structure is going to look like. So whenever we send a message to the server, we want it to look something like message, username, username. And so this is what our message is going to look like when we send it to the server. Now that we've got these helper things out of the way, I'm just going to create the run function. Now you can call this the main function, doesn't matter. I'm just going to call it the run function because it's more of an app scenario and run sounds better. So we have a run function, and then just call run down here. So inside a run function, we're going to get a username first. So we're going to big username, and then it's going to just be a field like enter, yeah, good idea. Enter your username. This is just going to prompt the user to enter the username. And we're using bake because we don't intend on changing the username. Now we're going to define a variable called input. This is the input I was talking about earlier, where when we call it in here, it's going to change the input out here. And it's just going to be null by default. And then we're going to create our client, which is just going to be socks socket client and localhost. And then I'm just going to put it on port 5000 because it's always open. You can do like 3628 or 4795, doesn't matter. So the first thing we have is we're going to send a connection message back just to make sure it's working. So as soon as the client connects, we're going to want to receive data. And the first data it's going to send is just going to connection message. So we're just going to print that out. And it'll tell us if we're doing it, if we've connected or not. If you see like connected, whatever it is, you know it's going to be connected. Now, I already typed this out. You might have just seen that unless you're blind. But get input. This is going to run our input field. And it's just going to get input in the background while we update all the incoming messages for the user at the same time. So we don't have to wait for the user to enter something before we get the new messages. So the way this is going to work is we're going to check if there's a new input. If there is, we're going to send it to the server along with our username in this format up there. Otherwise, we're just going to send null. And then we're going to see if the server has any new messages for us. And if they do, and it's not our message, so the username is different, we're going to print it out along with a colon and then the message. So like username colon message, like that. So I'm going to make the input first. Stop that. All right. If input is not null, whoops, then we're going to send to the client the dictionary like that we saw earlier. Username, and then message, input. Now the problem with this is the input is not going to go back to null, so we're just going to infinitely send this message over and over again. So I'm just going to set input back to null. Otherwise, there's no input, so we're just going to send null. We're just going to tell the server that it's not sending a message. So now we're going to get our response from the server. And close Copilot, more like that. And then we're going to make sure that the response isn't null. So if the username is the same thing as our username, I'm just going to make it continue. Otherwise, we're going to print. I forgot you have to put this in parentheses because it has higher priority. We're going to print username colon message, like that. And so that's actually our entire client done. It's pretty simple. It gets username, it connects, then it gets input in the background, and whenever there is input, sends it to the server. Whenever the server sends something back, it prints out the message. So we can just save this and move on to the server. Now for the server, I'm going to import socks because, yeah, it is. So now we're going to make our client function, which is just the function that takes in a connection and then just handles it in the background for every connection there is. So asynchronous, of course. Now for the run function, we're going to just have that, and then I'm going to call it down here. Now the reason I have this as an arrow to null is just because we haven't set that up yet, so I'm just going to use that temporarily instead of an empty body because it looks cooler. I mean, so first thing I'm going to do, make a server. Bake server socks socket, and then 5000 because that's what we're hosting it on. Then I'm going to create a latest message variable. Essentially, the latest message is going just to be set to whatever the latest message is. Then each connection is going to have their own latest message variable, and they're going to check if the server's latest message is the same as their client's latest message. And if it's not, they're going to send the latest message to their connection and then update their latest message. So then we're just going to create our while true loop. If that didn't make any sense, you'll see in a second. So waiting for connection, dot, dot, dot. Then we're going to get a connection. Server listen. And print line, connection received, good idea. Then just pass the connection into our client. So in here, we're actually going to start coding it now. First thing we're going to send is the connected message. Let's just say connected to chat. That's what's going to be printed out here. It's going to instantly receive just to make sure. And if it says connected to chat, you will know it's working. Next, I'm just going to make a print that just confirms this. Sent like connection message. And so here we have our messaging system. So we're going to create the last message, and we're going to set it to latest message so there isn't an instant send. But basically, whenever the last message is not the same as the latest message, it's going to update it and then send the last message. So let's create our while true event loop, whatever you want to call it. We're going to create a response variable, which I was going to say equals null, but we don't have to do that. So if our response is null, we might have to because it's going to be redefined a couple times. And essentially, what we're going to do is we're just going to send back response at the end of this. So this is just a quick way of manipulating it without having to send multiple things at once. Let's create our conditions to mess with it. So we're going to say if the last message is not the latest message, so the last message it registered is not the latest message that came in, we're going to make it so the last message is the latest message, and then set response to the last message. So it's going to send back the last message. So now we're going to have our action, which is what the user is sending in. And this happens right before we send anything to it. So we're going to say action is connection receive. Then we're going to send that. Now we can do received message, and then the response. And then we can set the latest message to the response. The thing is, we don't want it setting it to that if it's null. So if response is null, we can just continue. So that should be our entire app. So we're just going to test this by creating a new terminal. Oops. The first thing I'm going to run is the server. So the server's working. And I'm going to create another terminal. And I'm going to split this one so we can have two clients at once. It's going to be client 1. And it's going to be client 2. Whoops. Right. And so let's create this one. We're going to call it Joe like earlier. And also like earlier, Bomb. And so we see connected to chat, which is exactly what we want to see. Because that's our connection message, which means we did it right. So let's say hello world. And so it seems like we encountered an error. Let's look. Client send input. Not sure. It's like it's not sending it to the client. So I found the error. In here we have response equals null. Well, it was that. I changed it, but previously it was response and then all that stuff, but it's actually action because action is what the user's sending back. But I put response in there, which is what the server's sending back. And that's not good because that means it's always going to be null because you'll never get user response. So let's try this again. I'm going to shut down server. So we just do all that. So restart the server. Oops. Not again. All right. Restart the client. I didn't need to put DP. Let's look at this now. So in here we can just put like Joe, Billy, hello, and voila. On Joe's screen, Billy says hello. And then over here we can say hello world. How are you? And it's all working, it's all sending back and forth. If we check on the server, we have the received message in here, and it's all working very nicely. So this has been how to create a chat app in JPizza. It's very short for a chat app, as you can see. Not even 100 lines total combined from the client and the server. You can build upon this and host the server somewhere, like on a node, and see if you can get it to work globally if you want to. Right now, this is only going to work locally because of the localhost, but you can expand this if you want to. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something new.